Mexican records got the lights down low. Souldisco where the groovy people go. Hit play, let the music flow. Old school beats with a modern glow.
Hello everybody and a very warm welcome back to the latest episode of Hidden Jewels of Soul and Disco. In this episode I'm featuring one of my favorite male vocal groups of the 1970s, the Emeralds.
Not as hard as it may seem. Yeah. Farewell.
In today's episode, you will hear some snippets of an interview which was recorded in 1977 while the Emeralds were on tour in the United Kingdom. I love it when I find pieces like this because it makes it for us possible to hear the perspective of the artist at the time when it happened. So therefore, I'm very grateful to have found this interview. If you want to hear the complete interview, please check out the link down in the description below where you can hear the complete interview. I did improvements of the sound, so there will be a difference between the quality of my version of the interview and the original one. But nevertheless, it's a fantastic opportunity to hear that. But let's get back to the Emeralds, or aka the Detroit Emeralds. The original lineup of the group were the brothers Ivory Abraham, who was also called Abe, Cleophas and Raymond Tillman. When Cleophas and Raymond decided to leave the group, the remaining brothers were then joined by their childhood friends James Mitchell. While they were in Little Rock, their space to becoming a big artist was very limited. So they decided around 1967 and 1968 to move to Detroit, where the music scene was thriving. Moving to Detroit is in my humble opinion, a very brave move. America at that time was going through a very difficult period, and especially Detroit. But nevertheless, they found a recording home and had their first R&B chart success on the Rick Tix record label. And their first success was called Showtime. And here you hear a little snippet of the beginning of the group.
Well, two of the Detroit Emeralds were from the Tillman Dulles gospel group, and that was Ivy and Abe. Yeah. But I wasn't in the gospel group. But Abe and I got together, like I was singing with another group, and he started playing guitar behind us. And him and I got together just the same, and then we asked Ivy if he would come in and sing. So like, it was a coincidence.
Once the Emeralds moved to Detroit, they renamed themselves to the Detroit Emeralds. And by 1970, they also changed the record label and went to the now legendary Westbound Records.
And then we had another cut called Ordinary Man, which did pretty nice for us. And we were doing Ode to Billy Joe on our stage act. And our producer and the owner of the record company, Mr. Ed Wingate, along with Al Kent and Herman Reens and late Willie Garrett, has written a lot of tunes for the early acts on Rick Tick. They liked the way we were doing it on stage, so they said, hey, let's record it. And we enjoyed doing it.
I highly recommend that you check out the catalog by Westbound, because Westbound released albums like this one, and I'm pretty sure everybody who's watching this video right now is quite familiar with this album. So the catalog is highly, highly recommended.
And that's what led to us writing tunes like Do Me Right and Where This Rain Would Love. And You Want You Got It was the inspiration that we got from Mr. Wingate. So that was it. We're so close with him until we just stayed. And eventually, well, he had gotten out of the business, but he kind of looked after us, put us on his wings, and we were introduced to Mr. Armand Balladium of Westbound Records and Mr. Bonnie Mundelssohn. And it was history from there.
While the Emeralds were on tour, they made a visit to the High recording studio, which was led by the legendary Willie Mitchell. And Willie Mitchell loved the group, and he recorded a couple of demo tracks with them, which were finished once the tour was over and the guys were back in Detroit. And the results were the release of the 1971 debut album from the Detroit Emeralds, which was called Do Me Right.
He's a wonderful guy. We owe a lot to Willie because he took us in like sons, you know. We went down to record our second recording with Westbound. We were lucky enough to go into his studio and have his magic hand on the control boards, and the wonderful guys like the Hodges brothers and Howard Grimes and the late Al Jackson, who was with Liberty and MGs. We had such beautiful musicians, and I think that's the secret to our music being so appealing to the people, you know. Had some good people with us.
And their career really started to take off because they had a couple of single success. For example, the title track of the debut album, Do Me Right. We have If I Lose Your Love. From the 1972 album, and I really love the cover art of this one, is You Want It, You Got It. And we also have Baby, Let Me Take You in My Arms. I already mentioned the album You Want It, You Get It. There was a particular song on this album which was a huge hit around that time. And we're talking about 1972. And the song was called Feel the Need in Me. So some of you will say now, well, Nadine, I clearly remember that in the late 70s, I danced my ass off to that tune. And now you're going to tell me it was released in 1972. And why was it a hit years later? And why was it a hit in the first place? And why did I hear it in 1977 in the clubs and not in 1972 or 1973?
So we went in and re-recorded. It's basically the same track, but we did a little something different with it. It had it mixed different, so it did a disco version of Feel the Need. Same feeling, same everything. They did a little bit different when you hear it. And they were planning on rolling one of the other tunes off of it, but one of the latest were, I think it's Billboard, or Cashbox, Mr. Tom Malden, I think his name is. He heard the album. He said, you guys are crazy if you don't re-release this tune, you know. So it's really rough up to the company what tune they released as a single. We couldn't say, but they seem to be favoring Feel the Need for that particular album. So time we get back home, we'll be in the studio recording new material that we've had the pleasure of working with our musical director, Mr. Marvin Willis, and Mr. Brimstone Ingram, our pianist. They work with us, and we come up with some tunes that we think will be good. Plus, Ave has did about 4 or 5 new tunes. And they said, we think they're going to be giants. So I'm looking forward to this album, I Feel the Need, coming out, but I'm even looking more to the second album, the album which will feature and debut Mr. Carl Johnson with us.
In 1973, the Emeralds released their album, I'm in Love with You, and here it is in all of its 70s glory. And like I mentioned earlier, I love the Westbound record label, and in my humble opinion, they also created one of the most beautiful record labels you can imagine because they are so colorful. I'm totally in love with their label creation. But anyway, highly overlooked album from that era, and check it out. Now we get into the year 1974. And the group was in a crisis. They were actually splitting up. What happened was that Abe formed a new group and he continued using the name Detroit Emeralds. And James and Marvin now wrote not for the Emeralds, but for the Floaters. James and Ivory and Marvin then continued to tour as the Detroit Emeralds and stayed active. I'm sure you are familiar with the Floaters. I mean, Float On It's a stellar song, and I absolutely love the Floaters. So once again, highly, highly recommend it. And if you want to have original pressings, they are out there and they are available. I mentioned earlier that Abe continued to use the name the Detroit Emeralds. Well, there were at a certain point in time in the 1970s, two groups who called themselves the Detroit Emeralds, and that led to a legal dispute. But yeah, let's hear that from the group.
Now, are the Detroit Emeralds now going through a name change?
Not anymore. We were going through a contract dispute over the name, you know.
Yeah.
But we won. At first, we lost the rights to the name. Now we won it back. A company, you know, we went to court and they gave us the name back, and we're still Detroit Emeralds. We did have to change our name at one time.
So you're now back to Detroit with Emeralds.
The second album the group talks about was released in 1978, and it was called Let's Get It Together. And it featured my absolutely unsung hero backing group of the 1970s, Brandy. If you check out Brandy, you will be impressed, you will be blown away on how many recordings from the 1970s these ladies appeared. So once again, highly recommended to check out Brandy as a backing group, and also this album. Unfortunately, their only album, but also a great one. 1978 marked the end of the recording career of the Detroit Emeralds as we know it with this lineup. Like I said, Abe had different plans, but he was also responsible for all the big hits of the group. He wrote them, he produced them, and he left the group at a certain point. And from 1980 till 1982, he was heavily involved in gospel music with groups like Gospel Unlimited. By 1982, the group was in talks again to make a reunion, to appear once again with the most complete original lineup. But unfortunately, in 1982, Abe died of a heart attack, and this pretty much was the end of an era. Nowadays, James Mitchell is doing reunion tours with other artists and another lineup, and I think it's so great that he's doing this, so everybody might get the vibe and the feel back when they're to a concert of this group, how it was back in the day, and it must have been magical. Once again, Feel the Need is a song we all know and we all love, but the group has a tremendously great catalog, which I wish and hope that everybody of you checks out. There's another song I would like to point out. And back in the day, this was quite interesting that the group did a cover of this song, because it wasn't really meant to be a soul song, but the group turned it into a soul song. Well, that was the Beatles track, and I Love Her from the Beatles. And the interesting aspect of that song is that unusually for the Detroit Emeralds, there was no leading vocal in that track. So all of the guys sang harmony throughout the song, and they made a soulful version out of this one. So once again, also check this one out.
Well, that particular tune, it wasn't a soul tune. It was Paul McCartney's style, you know. And we decided to listen at the tune and rework with it and rehearse with it. And when we finished, we decided to rearrange it. And when we started doing it, we just came up with a completely different thing, and we enjoyed doing it. It's a very, very, very.
But it comes out as a soul song.
Yes, yeah.
Just about anything can go as soul music.
Well, that depends on how you arrange.
Is that?
Yeah.
Am I generalizing too much now?
No. It depends on how you arrange it, you know. Like, well, you can write a song, you know, and record it and whatever, and your production of the song, we can turn it around. So once I said, you know, it depends on your interpretation of the song.
Another recommendation is Set It Out, also from the 1977 album Feel the Need in Me. It's the first track on side A, also a hidden gem on this one. If you like that episode, I highly suggest that you're checking out the playlist appearing here. And if you're not familiar with the Detroit Emeralds, please go ahead and check them out. They deserve all the credit in the world. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.
Whatever the people want is what we want them to have.